This is my second video for day 9. We're in Leviticus chapter 23. We're just going through all these sacrifices, all the rules that God has for sacrifices. I'm noticing some interesting things about, how Moses has got these directions are directly for the priesthood. Most of them are, and it's directions to the priesthood on how to do this. So this is really, like I was saying in the introduction to this is their curriculum for how to do worship, how to make yourself holy and keep yourself holy, and what to watch out for, and how to deal with holiness. It's all about holiness. Teaching humans what holiness is. We're designed to worship, and we do that anyway. You see that with the pagans that are trying to worship in different ways, drinking the blood, and all of these things that we think are weird that we're reading in Leviticus are things that wouldn't have been weird to them, not in that time. And God's really clearly explaining to them why you're not supposed to do this, because this is how you defile yourself. This is how you defile the land, and this is how and when you do that, the land eventually gets taken away from you. And nations have gone through this over and over and over again. This is the natural way that the world works, and we really just can't get it. So let's keep reading. And I'm not saying that we need to follow all these laws, because these were for them in their time. Like I said, God would have a whole, if God was rewriting Leviticus in our time, these laws would look a lot more familiar to us. And this is how they look to them. These are things that they saw in Egypt, and this is what they're going to see in Canaan land. So let's just keep going. Chapter 23. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed festivals, the appointed festivals of the Lord, which you are to proclaim as a sacred assemblies." See, he cares about their celebration. These are celebrations, so we can't read these like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and do this, do this, do this. This is, I want you to celebrate this. I want you to love me, and I want you to love each other, and that's what all the rules are for. The Lord, the Sabbath. There are 6 days that you may work, but the 7th day is a day of the Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work, wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to the Lord. Verse 4. These are the Lord's appointed festivals. They are sacred assemblies. You are to proclaim them at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day of that month, the Lord's festival of unleavened bread begins. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. For on the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days present a food offering to the Lord. And on the 7th day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land, I'm going to give it to you and reap its harvest. Bring it to the priest, a sheaf of the first grain you harvest. He is to wave the sheaf before the Lord, so it will be accepted on your behalf. The priest is to wave it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day that you wave the sheaf, you must sacrifice as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb, a year old without defect, together with a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil, a food offering presented to the Lord, a pleasing aroma, and its drink offering 1/4 of a hin of wine. You must not eat any bread or roast any new grain. until the very day you bring this offering to your God. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. Verse 15, the Festival of Weeks. Verse 15. From the day after the Sabbath, the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, count off 7 full weeks. Count off 50 days up to the day after the seventh Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to the Lord. From wherever you live, bring 2 loaves made of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour, baked with yeast, as a wave offering of first fruits to the Lord. Present with this bread 7 male lambs, each a year old without defect, 1 bull and 2 rams. They will be a burnt offering to the Lord, together with the grain offering and their drink offerings, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. And then sacrifice 1 male goat for a sin offering, and 2 lambs, each a year old, for a fellowship offering. The priest is to wave the 2 lambs before the Lord as a wave offering, together with the bread of the first fruits. They are a sacred offering to the Lord for the priest. On that same day you are to proclaim a sacred assembly and do no regular work. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you. I am the Lord your God. The Festival of Trumpets, verse 23. For the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly commemorating with trumpet blasts. Do no regular work. Present a food offering to the Lord." The Day of Atonement, verse 26. The Lord said to Moses, "On the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. Hold a sacred assembly and deny yourselves and present a food offering to the Lord. Do not do any work on that day, because it is the Day of Atonement. When atonement is made for you before the Lord your God, those who do not deny themselves on that day must be cut off from their people. I will destroy from among their people anyone who does any work on that day. You shall do no work at all. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. It is a Sabbath rest for you, and you must deny yourselves. From the evening of the 9th day of the month until the following evening, you are to observe your Sabbath. The Festival of Tabernacles, verse 33. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the Lord's Festival of Tabernacles begins, and it lasts for 7 days. The first day is a sacred assembly. Do no regular work. For 7 days present food offerings to the Lord. On the 8th day hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to the Lord. It is the closing special assembly. Do no regular work. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for bringing food offerings to the Lord. The burnt offerings and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings are required for each day. The offerings are in addition to those for the Lord's Sabbaths, and in addition to your gifts and whatever you have vowed, all the free will offerings you give to the Lord. Verse 39. So beginning with the 15th day of the 7th month, after you have gathered the crops of the land, and celebrate the festival of the Lord for 7 days, on the first day of the Sabbath rest, and the 8th day also is a Sabbath rest. On the first day you are to take branches from luxuriant trees, from palms willows, and other leafy trees, and rejoice before the Lord for 7 days. Celebrate this as a festival to the Lord for 7 days each year. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Celebrate it in the 7th month. Live in live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live out in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So Moses announced to the Israelites the appointed festivals of the Lord. Chapter 24. The Lord said to Moses, "Command the Israelites to bring your clear oil of pressed olives for the light, so that the lamps may be kept burning continually. Outside the curtain that shields the ark of the covenant law in the tent of meeting, Aaron is to tend the lamps before the Lord from evening till morning, continually. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. The lamps on pure gold lampstands, the lamps on the pure gold lampstand before the Lord must be tended continually. Take the finest flour and bake 12 loaves of bread, using 2/10 of an ephah for each loaf. Arrange them in 2 stacks, 6 in each stack, on the table before the Lord your God, on the table of pure gold before the Lord. By each stack put some pure incense as a memorial portion to the present, to represent the bread and the food offering presented to the Lord. This bread is to be set before the Lord regularly, Sabbath after Sabbath, on behalf of the Israelites, as a lasting covenant. It belongs to Aaron and his sons, who are to eat it in the sanctuary area, because it is a most holy part of their perpetual share of the food offerings presented to the Lord. Verse 10. Now the son of an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father went out among the Israelites, and a fight broke out in the camp between him and an Israelite. The son of the Israelite woman blasphemed the name with a curse, so they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri the Danite. They put him in custody until the will of the Lord should be made clear to them. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Take the blasphemer outside the camp. All those who heard him are to lay their hands on his head, and the entire assembly is to stone him. Say to the Israelites, anyone who curses their God will be held responsible. Anyone who blasphemes the name of the Lord is to be put to death. The entire assembly must stone them, whether foreigner or native-born. When they blaspheme the name, they are to be put to death. Anyone who takes life of a human being is to be put to death. Anyone who takes the life of an animal must make restitution, life for life. Anyone who injures their neighbor is to be injured in the same manner. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. The one who has inflicted the injury must suffer the same injury. Whoever kills an animal must make restitution, but whoever kills a human being is to be put to death. You are the same. You are to have the same law for the foreigner and the native-born. I am the Lord your God." Then Moses spoke to the Israelites, and they took the blasphemer outside the camp and stoned him. The Israelites did as the Lord commanded Moses. Chapter 25. The Lord said to Moses at Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I am going to give you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years sow your fields and for 6 years prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But in the 7th year the land is to have a Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows itself. The harvest grapes for your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and your female servants, and the hired worker and temporary resident living among you, as well as for your livestock and your wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. Verse 8. Count off 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbath years amount to a period of 49 years. Then have the trumpet sounded everywhere. On the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement, the sound of the trumpet throughout your land. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land. It is all to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property and call your own and to your own clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. So do not sow, do not reap what grows itself for harvest the untended vine, or harvest the untended vines. For it is a jubilee, and it is to be holy for you. Eat only what is taken directly from the fields. In this year of the jubilee, everyone is to return to their own property. If you sell land to any of your own people, or buy the land from them, do not take advantage of each other. You are to buy from your own people on the basis of the number of years since the Jubilee, and they are to sell you on the basis of the number of years left for harvesting crops. When the years are many, you are to increase the price. When the years are few, you are to decrease the price, because what is really being sold to you is the number of crops. Do not take advantage of each other, but fear your God. I am the Lord your God. Verse 18. Follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and live there in safety. You may ask, what will we eat in the 7th year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year that the land will yield enough for 3 years. While you plant during the 8th year, you will eat from the crop from the old crop, and will continue to eat from it until the harvest of the 9th year comes in. Verse 23, the land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Throughout the land you hold as a possession, you must provide for the redemption of the land. Verse 25. If one of your fellow Israelites becomes poor and sells some of their property, the nearest relative is to come and redeem what they have sold. If, however, there is no one to redeem it for them, but later on they prosper and acquire sufficient means to redeem it themselves, they are to redeem the value for the years since they sold it, and refund the balance to the one whom they sold it. They can go back to their own property. But if they do not acquire the means to repay, what was sold will remain in the possession of the buyer until the year of the Jubilee. It will be returned in the Jubilee, that they can go back to their property. Verse 29. Anyone who sells a house in a walled city retains the right of redemption a full year after its sale. During the time of the seller may redeem it. But if it is not redeemed before a full year has passed, the house in the walled city should belong permanently to the buyer and to the buyer's descendants. It is not to be returned in the Jubilee. But houses in villages without walls around them are to be considered as belonging to the open country. They can be redeemed and they can be returned in the Jubilee. Verse 32. The Levites always have the right to redeem their houses in the Levitical towns which they possess. So the property of the Levites is redeemable. That is a house sold in any town they hold. And it is to be returned in the Jubilee, because the houses and towns of the Levites are their property among the Israelites. But the pasture land belonging to their towns must not be sold. It is their permanent possession. If anyone of your fellow Israelites become poor and are unable to support yourselves among you, help them as you would a foreigner and stranger, so they can continue to live among you. Do not take interest or any profit from them, but fear your God, so that they may continue to live among you. You must not lend them any money at interest or sell them any food at a profit. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt to the land of Canaan, and to be your God. Verse 39. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you, do not make them work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired workers, or temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of the Jubilee, and then their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans, to the property of their ancestors, because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt, because they must not be sold as slaves. Do not rule over them ruthlessly, but fear your God. Verse 44. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves, and you may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you, and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property, and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. Verse 47. If a foreigner residing among you becomes rich, or if any of your fellow Israelites become poor, sell themselves to the foreigner, to a member of a foreigner's clan, they are to retain the right of redemption after they have sold themselves. One of the relatives may redeem them. An uncle or a cousin or any blood relative in their clans may redeem them, or if they prosper, they may redeem themselves. They and their buyer are to count the time for the year they sold themselves up to the year of the Jubilee. The price for their release is to be based on the rate paid to a hired worker for that number of years. If many years remain, they must pay for their redemption a larger share of the price paid for them. If only a few years remain until the Jubilee, they are to compute that and pay for their redemption accordingly. They are to be treated as workers hired from year to year. You must see to it that those whom they owe service to do not rule over them ruthlessly. Verse 54. Even if someone does not redeem any of these ways, they and their children are to be released in the year of the Jubilee. For the Israelites belong to me as servants. They are my servants, and whom I brought out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Chapter 26. Do not make idols or set up an image or a sacred stone for yourselves, and do not place a carved stone in your land to bow down before it. I am the Lord your God. Observe my Sabbaths, and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. If you follow my decrees and are careful to obey my commands, I will send rain in its season, and the ground will yield its crops, and the trees their fruit, and your threshing will continue until grape harvest, and the grape harvester will continue until planting, and you will eat all the food you want, and live in safety in your land. I will grant peace in the land, and you will lie down and no one will make you afraid. I will remove the wild beast from the land, and the sword will not pass through your country. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall by the sword before you. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000, and your enemies will fall by the sword before you. Verse 9. I will look on you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your numbers, and I will keep my covenant with you, and you will still be eating last year's harvest when you have to move it out to make room for the new. I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. I will walk among you, and I will be your God, and you will be my people, and I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. Verse 14. But if you do not listen to me and carry out all these commands, if you reject my decrees and abhor my laws and fail to carry out all my commands, and so violate my covenant, verse 16, then I will do this to you. I will bring on you sudden terror, wasting diseases, and fever that will destroy your sight and sap your strength. You will plant seed in vain because your enemies will eat it. And I will set my face against you so that you will be defeated, and your enemies, those who hate you, will rule over you, and you will flee even when no one is pursuing you. Verse 18. If after all of this you will not listen to me, I will punish you for your sins 7 times over. I will break down your stubborn pride and make the sky above you like iron and on the ground beneath you like bronze. Your strength will be spent in vain because your soil will not yield its crops, nor will the trees of your land yield their fruit. If you remain hostile toward me and refuse to listen to me, I will multiply your affliction 7 times over as your sins deserve. I will send wild animals against you, and they will rob you of your children, destroy your cattle, and make you so few in number that your roads will be deserted. Verse 23. In spite of all these things, if you do not accept my correction, but continue to be hostile towards me, I myself will be hostile towards you, and I will afflict your sins 7 times over. And I will bring the sword on you to avenge the breaking of the covenant. When you withdraw into your cities, I will send plague among you, and you will be given into enemy hands. Then, when I cut off your supply of bread, 10 women will be able to bake your bread in one oven, and they will not dole out the bread by weight. You will eat, but you will not be satisfied. 27. If in spite of this you still do not listen to me and continue to be hostile towards me, and then in my anger I will be hostile towards you, and then I myself will punish you for your sins 7 times over. You will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters, and I will destroy your high places and cut down your incense altars and pile your dead bodies on the lifeless forms of your idols. I will abhor you. I will turn your cities into ruins and lay waste to your sanctuaries, and I will take no delight in the pleasing aroma of your offerings. I myself will lay waste the land so that your enemies who live there will be appalled. And I will scatter you among the nations, and will draw out my sword and pursue your land. Your land will be laid waste. Your cities will lie like ruins, and the land will enjoy its Sabbath years. All the time that it lies desolate, and you are in the country of your enemies, then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. All the time that lies desolate, the land will have its rest, and it did not have during the Sabbaths that you lived in it. Remember that for later. As for those, verse 36, as for those who are left, I will make their hearts so fearful in the lands of their enemies that the sound of a wind-blown leaf will put them to flight. They will run as fleeing from the sword. They will fall even though no one is pursuing them, and they will stumble over one another as though fleeing from the sword, even though no one is pursuing them. You will not be able to stand before your enemies, and you will perish among the nations, and the land of your enemies will devour you. Those who are left will waste away in the land of their enemies, because of their sins, and also because of their ancestors' sins, they will waste away. But if they will confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and their hostility towards me, which made me hostile towards them, so that I sent them into the land of their enemies, then when their uncircumcised hearts are humbled and they pay for their sin, I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land, for the land will be deserted by them, and will enjoy its Sabbaths while it lies desolate without them. They will pay for their sins because they rejected my laws and abhorred my decrees. Yet in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or abhor them, so as to destroy them completely, breaking my covenant with them. I am the Lord, their God. But for their sake, I will remember the covenant with their ancestors, whom I brought out of Egypt in the sight of the nations, to be their God. I am the Lord. Verse 46. These are the decrees and the laws and the regulations that the Lord established on Mount Sinai between himself and the Israelites through Moses. Chapter 27, the last chapter. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if anyone makes a special vow to dedicate a person to the Lord, by giving the equivalent value, set the value of a male between the ages of 20 and 60 at 50 shekels of silver, according to the sanctuary shekel. For a person between the ages of For a female, set her value at 30 shekels. For a person between the ages of 50 and 20, set the value of a male at 20 shekels, and of a female at 10 shekels. For a person between 1 month and 5 years, set the value of the male at 5 shekels of silver, and that of the female at 3 shekels of silver. For a person of 60 years old or more, set the value of a male at 15 shekels, and the value of a female at 10 shekels. If anyone making the vow is too poor, they may pay the specified amount of the person which is being dedicated is to be presented to the priest, who will set the value according to the one making the vow can afford. Verse 9. If what they vowed is an animal that is acceptable as an offering to the Lord, such an animal given to the Lord becomes holy. They must not exchange it for a substitute, or substitute a good one for a bad one, or a bad one for a good one. If they should substitute one animal for another, both it and the substitute become holy. If what they vowed is a ceremonially unclean animal, one that is not acceptable as an offering to the Lord, the animal must be presented to the priest, who will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever the value the priest sets on it, then that is what it will be. If the owner wishes to redeem the animal, a fifth must be added to its value. Verse 14. If anyone dedicates their house to something holy, or as something holy to the Lord, the priest will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever the value the priest sets, so it will remain. If the one who dedicates their house wishes to redeem it, they must add a fifth to its value, and the house will again become theirs. Verse 16. If anyone dedicates to the Lord a part of their family land, its value is to be set according to the amount of seed required for it, 50 shekels of silver to an omer of barley seed. If they dedicate the field during the year of the Jubilee, the value has been set remains. But if they dedicate a field after the Jubilee, the priest will determine the value according to the number of years that remain until the next year of Jubilee, and its set value will be reduced. If the one who dedicates the field wishes to redeem it, they must add a fifth to its value, and the field again will become theirs. If, however, they do not redeem the field, or have sold it to someone else, it can never be redeemed. When the field is released in the Jubilee, it will become holy, like a field devoted to the Lord. It will become priestly property. Verse 22. If anyone dedicates to the Lord a field they have bought, which is not part of their family land, the priest will determine its value up to the year of the Jubilee, and the owner must pay its value on that day as something holy to the Lord. In the year of the Jubilee, the field will revert to the person whom it was bought, the one whose land it was. Every value is to be set according to the sanctuary shekel, 20 gerahs to a shekel. Verse 26. No one, however, may dedicate the firstborn of an animal, since the firstborn already belongs to the Lord. Whether an ox or a sheep, it is the Lord's. If it is one of the unclean animals, it may be brought back to its set value, adding a fifth of the value to it. It is not redeemed. If it is not redeemed, it is to be sold at its set value. But nothing that a person owns and devotes to the Lord, whether a human being or an animal or family land, may be sold or redeemed. Everything so devoted is most holy to the Lord. Verse 29. No person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. They are to be put to death. Verse 30. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. Whoever would redeem any of their tithe must add a fifth to the value to it. Every tithe of the herd and flock, and every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod, will be holy to the Lord. No one may pick out the good from the bad or make substitution. If anyone does make substitution, both the animal and its substitute become holy, and it cannot be redeemed. These are the commands that the Lord gave Moses on Mount Sinai for the Israelites. Alright, we're going to read one chapter in Numbers. And before I wanted to do that, I wanted to talk about how how this writing happens. There is a lot of backstitching going on, and as we're getting prepared to go to Numbers, I put a Bible Project video up in the group to give us an outline for it. But Numbers is another narrative. So we're going back into, remember how when we were reading through Genesis. So we have some action going on. So I've been looking forward to getting into this. Leviticus is hard to get through. It's a difficult read. We did it. That's awesome. We should celebrate that. If you read through with me, man, you are awesome. You're a trooper. If you're hanging out with me from here on out, you got it. You got it made. Now we got through Leviticus. Everything else is downhill. That was the steep part of the hill. No, the Bible's pretty tough. Okay. Now, Numbers is narrative history, but we're backstitching. I say that because now this is like the record of their time in the wilderness. It wasn't meant to be 40 years. It wasn't supposed to be that long at all. And then something happens. Okay, I'm not going to spoil the story for you or anything like that, but we're backstitching again now. So we're going back to Sinai. So we've gone through, so what's happened so far is all the backstory from Genesis. I'm not going to go over that, but they've been redeemed from Egypt, and they've gone up to this mountain, to Mount Sinai. They went through and they complained about the water. The water was bitter, and they fixed the water, and they make it to Mount Sinai. And Moses goes up for 40 days, and then he comes down and breaks the tablets. He goes up for 40 more days. This is what God told Moses. All of these things are the things that Moses and God talked about on Mount Sinai. So he's come down, and they've built the tabernacle and all the things that in Exodus. They built the tabernacle and they built all the things. And now Leviticus has told us all of the rules that he told Moses to keep, and how to do these things, and how to go through all this stuff. Now Numbers is the wilderness wandering book, and that's where we are now. So let's read one chapter, and then we'll call it a day. Numbers chapter 1. The Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites had come out of Egypt. He said, "Take a census of the whole Israelite community by their clans and families, listing every man by name, one by one. You and Aaron are to account according to the divisions of all the men in Israel who are 20 years old or more, each able to serve in the army. One man for each tribe, each of them the head of his family is to help you. These are the names of the men who are to assist you. From Reuben, Elizur, son of Shedeur. From Simeon, Shemiel, son of Zoreshadai. From Judah, Nashon, son of Aminadab. From Issachar, Nathaniel, son of Zuar. From Zebulun, Eliab, son of Helon. From the sons of Joseph, from Ephraim, Elishama, son of Ammihud. From Manasseh, Gamaliel, son of Pedahzur. From Benjamin, Abidan, son of Gideoni. From Dan, Ahiezer, son of Ammishaddai. From Asher, Pagiel, son of Okran. From Gad, Elisaph, son of Duel. From Naphtali, Ahira, son of Enan. Verse 16. These were the men appointed from the community, the leaders of their ancestral tribes, they were the heads of their clans of Israel. Moses and Aaron took these men whose names had been specified, and they called the whole community together on the first day of the second month. The people registered their ancestry by the clans and the families of the men 20 years old or more were listed by name one by one, as the Lord commanded Moses. And so he counted them in the desert of Sinai. From the descendants of Reuben, the firstborn son of Israel, all men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name, one by one, according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Reuben was 46,500. Verse 22, from the descendants of Simeon, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were counted and listed by name, one by one, according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Simeon was 59,300. From the descendants of Gad, all the men were 20 years old or more were able to serve in the army, listed by name, according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Gad was 45,650. From the descendants of Judah, all the men were 20 years old or more. They were able to serve in the army and were listed by name according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Judah was 74,600. Verse 28. From the descendants of Issachar, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name according to the records of their clans and families. The number of the tribe of Issachar was 54,400. Verse 30. From the descendants of Zebulun, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Zebulun was 57,400. 32. From the sons of Joseph, from the descendants of Ephraim, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name, according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Ephraim was 40,500. From the descendants of Manasseh, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name, according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Manasseh was 32,200. From the descendants of Benjamin, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name according to their records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Benjamin was 35,400. From the descendants of Dan, all the men who were 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name according to their records, to the records of their clans and families. The number of the tribe of Dan was 62,700. Verse 40. From the descendants of Asher, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name according to their records of their clan and families. The number of the tribe of Asher was 41,500. From the descendants of Naphtali, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Naphtali was 53,400. These were the men, verse 44, these were the men counted by Moses and Aaron and the 12 leaders of Israel, each one representing his family. All the Israelites 20 years old or more who were able to serve in Israel's army were counted according to their families. The total number was 603,550. Verse 47. The ancestral tribe of the Levites, however, was not counted along with the numbers. The Lord said to Moses, "You must not count the tribe of Levi or include them in the census of the other Israelites. Instead, appoint the Levites to be in charge of the tabernacle of the covenant law, over all its furnishings and everything belonging to it. They are to carry the tabernacle and all its furnishings, and they are to take care of it, and encamp around it. Whenever the tabernacle is to move, the Levites are to take it down, and whenever the tabernacle is to set up, the Levites shall do it. Anyone who approaches it is to be put to death. The Israelites are to set up their tents by divisions, each of them in their own camp under their standard. The Levites, however, are to set up their tents around the tabernacle of the covenant law so that my wrath will not fall on the Israelite community. The Levites are to be responsible for the care of the tabernacle of the covenant law. 54. The Israelites did all this just as the Lord commanded Moses. That's incredible. I love it. There's long videos yesterday and today. We're getting closer to it. We're getting closer to an hour and a half. All right. I love you. God loves you too. Thanks for watching. Keep reading the Bible. We made it through the hard part. Numbers is fun.